Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Ksubas daf Nun Zayin. We're going to begin on the very last line of Nun Vav Amud Beis with the following story. Achte de Rami Bar Chama Hamnetzivul Rav Avyo. So the sister of Rami Bar Chama married Rav Avyo. So that sounds pretty fine and normal. But as we continue to Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, unfortunately something happened. Irchas ksubasa. She lost her star ksuba. Now the question is, if she does not have a ksuba, do we in some way compare it to what we saw previously, that if instead of giving her 200 zuz, he asks his wife-to-be to please say his kabalti, or to write this in the ksuba, that I already accepted 100. So she's really not getting the 200, and in this case, she doesn't have a ksuba. So Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Huda, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir that it's problematic. Says Rashi, El Kol hapoiches besul Messiah ve'afilu betana, but tanai bottle karila biusnus. Even though the condition was not valid, it's still considered to be a biusnus mishum dolei samcha daita, because she no longer has this trust and belief in her being able to receive this money. So, same person, Rameir, is of the opinion that you're not allowed to be with your wife if her ksuba is lost. Isla, even if she has it, she's just somewhere around the house, can't find it. She's not going to lose anything with this, because there's a Tanai based in that says that she's going to get this money. Nonetheless, lo samcha daita, the amar ki tavole omer paratich. Maybe when I come to collect my ksuba, one day he's going to say that I paid it to you already. Therefore, it's actually business. No, misha adam es ishtar shtar v'shor shtanim b'l ksuba. Chachamim say that you are able to be with your wife for even a couple of years, 3 years. Obviously, as Rashi, Tosha says, "Ein ladakti kain hashta sholosh mutter shtaim miboy the dilma shtaim sholosh v'fil tuva." It's just an expression. It's not like, so why does it say 2 or 3? Just make a, obviously, if you can stay for 3, you can stay with her for 2. So it doesn't mean specifically. So and Rashi says the reason is the leis lamechash rishum mismach daita. We're not concerned that just because she's not semech das the havi bil's nus, that we're going to make the statement that the bia is nus. So on this, Harmulei Abaye B'Haim Reb Nachman Amar Shemuel Halacha Reb Meir B'Gzei Roisav. The halacha is like Reb Meir when it comes to something like this, and this is a davar in which we should be strict as davar Torah, matters of Isser and Heter. So we should be passing like Reb Meir that it's an issue or the lost star. Yihachi star ksuba. So Yihachi zil kosavla. So if that's the case, then go write another shtar ksuba to alleviate this issue. So Kiyos Rav Dimi, focusing on the words of Rav Dimi, Rav Shimon ben Pazi, Rav Yeshua ben Levi, again we have to focus on that name, Mishum bar Kapara, Machlokes, the whole Machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, says Rashi, and Rabbi Yehuda al Peh, Lav Tanaihu, Rabbi Yossi Sever Tanai Kayim. So if, let's say, not that she writes down his Kabbalti, but it's just a declaration, he says 200, and she says, okay, I already accepted 100, doesn't actually have to be written down. So that whole machlokas is only betchila, the beginning. We're going to discuss the beginning of what. Abu Basov, if this happened at the end, which we'll discuss what that means, at the end, she's not going to have forgiven. Says Rashi, Shkvar Zachsa, because at the end, let's say she's already completely married, so she's already meriting the ksub anyway. V'amrisa lav klum. El imkin kaso shuvar his kabalti. If, unless she writes it, that's one thing. But if all she says is a declaration, that's not enough, because there's already a pre-existing rule that she gets her ksuba at that time of at the end of the marriage. Not the end of the marriage, but when the marriage begins, after having performed all the procedures. So that's one opinion. The machlokes, whether if it was not written down, whether it works is only at the beginning, but at the end, everyone says it will not work. Rabbi Yochanan, no, ben bezu machlokas. Even betchila, it's a machlokas, that there are those that say that even, not only at the beginning is a machlokas, but even at the end, we can say maybe she could be moichel. So Rabbi Vuladim, if our Shalim in Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan, who says that doesn't matter if it's the beginning or the end, there's still this machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. That is the, he explains the matter of Yochanan, the Anav Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Lo Palgina Hadadi, that I and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who says that above that there is a machlok, the machlok is only b'tchil, not b'sof, they actually don't argue. What do you mean they don't argue? They clearly, according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he says the machlokas is only b'tchila, not b'sof. Rabbi Yochanan says the machlokas is ben bezu. So how could they both say the same thing? So the question is, you have to define what is sof. My b'tchila dekam Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. What did Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi mean when he said that they argue at the beginning? Tchilas chuppah, at the beginning of chuppah. That's what he means. So myself, sof bia. So at the very, very end of bia, then okay, there's nothing to talk about. I agree that she cannot be moichel. When I, Rabbi Yochanan, said bin bezu machlokas, tchilas chuppah v'soiv chuppah, tchilas bia. So I actually was speaking about tchilas chuppah, v'sov chuppah, which is tchilas bia, and therefore, according to that, there will be indeed a machlokas. Kiyasa Ravin says, "No, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Rabbi Yosef ben Levi, Misham bar Kapara, machlokas b'sof." Actually, the whole machlokas, where they're just saying it is enough, is at the end of the ceremony. The beginning actually holds that you could do so, even verbally. Rabbi Yochanan ben bezu machlokas. Some Rabbi Voladim Mafashel mean Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Levi will pagina adadi. It's possible they don't argue. What do you mean they don't argue? You just said that they argue at Batchila, and he says they don't argue at Batchila. So my little besov, they come Rabbi Shimon Levi, so chuppah, my Tchila, Tchilas chuppah. So he holds that at Tchilas chuppah, at that point, the din is that by Tchilas chuppah, Rabbi Shimon Levi says that she can be moichel, because the beginning of chuppah. And I agree to that. So when you said tchila, you were referring to tchilas chuppah. When I said tchila, I'm talking about tchilas bia. So at tchilas bia, it's a machlokas. However, I agree to you that when it comes to tchilas chuppah, that certainly she can be moichel. So therefore, we're not really arguing. Amra Papa, Rabbi Avodah, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Levi, Palgina Hadadi. If it wasn't for the fact that they said that they agree, Havaminu would actually think Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Levi, pligi. You would think that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon Levi do argue, which is what it sounds pretty clear. Rabdimi, Ravin, lo pligi, and Rabdimi and Ravin are the ones that don't disagree. Again, Rabdimi is the one that brought the first statement. That according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that the machlokas is betchila, but besof everyone says ein mochalos, and Ravin said no. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said that the machlokas is the end, but the beginning everyone holds you are moichel. So it's possible that those two statements are the same. When Ravin said his statement, this later statement that we're talking about sof. So according to the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. So he said that the machlokas is besof, sof chuppah. So they argue there. Remind tchila to come Rabdimi, and when Rabdimi said batchila, that batchila is a machlokas, just like he says besof and machlokas. To come Rabdimi tchilas bia. It's referring to the beginning of bia. My kamash, well hakamashim, but the pligi trei amarai atamidav shaihu, that the two amarayim disagree. And not that they're arguing a liba one amoira. Okay. So, regardless, that is the possible mindset of sometimes the machlokas takes place, whether she could just make the statement hiskabalti and not actually have to have it written down in the shtar. Certainly, when we come to the end of the procedure at the end of Bia, she can no longer be Moichel. At the beginning of the relationship of Tchilas Chuppah, so that situation she certainly could, and the question is in between. Let's see the next Mishnah. Noisin libsula shtem asar chaydish, mishetava habal lafarnes as atzmai. So once they get together and make a commitment to get married, so the din is that he has 12 months, and as we alluded to, we're going to see this again, even though it was brought down at the very beginning of this Masechta, that she's given 12 months, and he doesn't give her mazonos until after that time, and she has these 12 months to literally to lafarnis atzma, to provide parnasa, livelihood. Rashi says it means patachshitin, that she has to get the wedding gown and all these different things necessary to prepare herself for the wedding. That's lafarnis atzma. And then lafarnis atzma, Rashi then says b'tzarchi suda v'chuppah. So that's for him. So she prepares the clothing, and he prepares getting the meal, and the suda for the wedding, and preparing a beautiful chuppah. So that's what goes on. So they're given 12 months. Lafarnes as atzma. So just like we gave her the 12 months, so he also has his preparations. When it comes to an almana, second wedding, says Rashi, she already has her wedding gown from her first wedding, so she'll wear it again. It doesn't obviously mean specifically that, but it means that she has already purchased a lot of these items that a woman will have, and therefore a married woman would have, so therefore she doesn't need as much time. And therefore, after the 30 days, he has to provide for her if the chuppah doesn't take place. So let's say the husband pushes it off, and he doesn't marry her after this allotted amount of time. So the din is that she eats food. He has to start providing for her food. And also, in the event that if he's a Kohen and she's the Israelis, so that she's not allowed to eat the truma. Now we're going to see really midiraisa, once Kedushin took place already, let's say a year before, she was technically allowed to already eat truma, but the Gemara explains why there's a gezerah. There's a couple of reasons we'll see. Rav Tarfon noisin lo hakoil truma. Says that he gives to her all truma. What does that mean? Im yirtza, if he wants. So kashiagi yimei tumasa, and when she becomes tamei, Tim Karena, she could sell it, Vatika Chulin, and she can buy Chulin. So it's not that he has to specifically give, when she's Tahar, she can get Truma. When she's Tameya, you have to give her Chulin foods. No, she can always be given Truma. Rikiba Oimer, Mechsa Chulin, Mechsa Truma. It makes sense, you should split it up. When she's Tameh, she'll take the half for Chulin. When she's, she'll eat the chulin, and when she's tahar, then she'll be able to eat the truma. Hayavam einu meichel b'truma. If you have a yavam, so while she's a shomeris yavam, she is not allowed to eat truma. So her husband died, they're childless, and she's going to marry or to yibum with this man's brother. So during that state, we don't allow her to eat truma, even though the man that she's going to do yibum with is a kohen. Us is a shisha chadashim mibnei habal, v'shisha chadashim mimnei hayabum. We give 6 months in front of the husband and 6 for the yabum. What is that? It says Rashi, Mahanach shtei masar chaydish hakavuim law. There's 12 months. Mishitava habal. O afil kulam mibnei habal. V'ech mibnei hayavam. Let's say some of them are there and some of them are there. Afal gav deruba mibnei habal. So v'nischayim mizoseh habachayev. The kinyan habal paka. So as long as that year hasn't taken place, the yavam, this man doesn't have to provide her mizonos. This is what it means here. If let's say that 6 months out of the year she was in front of her, she was in front of the Baal, and then let's say her husband died, and then 6 months she is a Shemeres Yavam. If you kumim Baal, if let's say Chaser Yom Echad, so the husband was just about to have to feed her, but he died 1 day before the year, or B'nei Yavam. So it doesn't make any difference. She's still not eat truma by this new man because it hasn't yet been a year. Zu Mishnah Rishayna. This is the first statement, as Rashi says, Gizman Ochelos Truma, based in Shel Achrehen Oimru, but a later based in institute as we continue to Dunzayin Mabeis. Say no, we're not going to say after a year that this is acceptable. A woman has to wait until the year goes by before she is able to eat truma. Okay. Fine. So let's see the Gemara. So Minahanimili, how do we know this concept that you're supposed to wait for 12 months? What's this notion of 12 months to prepare for a wedding? So on this, that Rivka's brother Lavan and his mother, because Basul had died, said, let this girl, Rivka, stay by us before you bring her back, speaking to Eliezer, for the wife of Yitzchak. Let her stay for yomim, days, or 10. Now, what my yomim? What does it mean days? Il mitrei yomi. Let her stay for 2 days. Mishtoi inishachin. Does a person say, "Oh, let her stay for 2 days"? It doesn't sound like that's logical. It must be more than 2 days. So amrulei trei yomi. So amrulei, they said 2 days. Amrulhu, and then lo amrulei asar. Amrulhu lo. He says no. 2 days, no. So amrulei asar yomi. Doesn't make any sense, because if they said, "Oh, could at least she stay for 2 days?" No, she cannot stay that long. How about 10 days? Well, obviously that's not what it means, because if she can't stay for 2 days, then you're not going to allow her to stay that long either. 10 days. El my yomim shana. It must be that the first one in the negotiation was a longer time. It must be a year. D'chsev yomim tegulasai. So therefore, when it says yomim, it's actually referring to a year. Ve'ema chodesh, maybe it's a month. D'chsev ad chodesh yomim. Sarmi done in yomim stam yomim stam. Ve'en done in yomim stam yomim shnemer hen chodesh. So therefore, we're not going to assume that the word yomim is referring to month, but rather it's going to be referring to years. Okay. So the yomim in this case, again, we done in yomim stam, because when it says yomim, it just says yomim. It doesn't mention anything about what yomim means, and our drush is yomim tegulasai, not from yomim to yomim, which tells us specifically it's a month. So it must be when it says specifically a month, then okay, that's what yomim means. But if it's stam, then it probably doesn't mean a month. It probably means more than that. It means a year. Okay. Shenemer behen kait. So Amar Rab Zera Tana. So 1 second, let's look at TA11 for 1 second. TA11 asks, Maha markum in a Tyrish nice and l'basul yid beis chaydish. How do we know that a girl gets 12 months? So we see because of this pasuk, okay. Weiter. So Tana Katana bein hiyuvin aviha yochin la'akev. So if we're dealing with a girl, she's so young, which because obviously it's an issue for a young girl to get married, so they're allowed to push it off. Now, Bishlam ihi matzim akva, I understand why she's able to push it off. El avia, the father, ihi nichala, if it's good for her to get married, avia my nafkalimina. So what's the big deal? Why is he protesting? So savar hashtal yada lamachar mimrida v'nafka v'asa v'nafal ilavai. Because the problem is, because she's so young, now she's accepting it, but her mind is not so strong. She's not a bas das. Maybe this is not a good decision for her. She's going to end up perhaps changing her mind, and she'll end up coming back to me. So therefore, the father also has a right to refuse, if he so wishes, that the wedding should be pushed off until she's older. Rab Ababar Levi ein poiskin al hakatana hasiya kashikatana, that we don't arrange. It says Rashi v'davka b'lo kedushin. We're not going to arrange that she should get married while she's a kid. Katana. You could actually say, okay, that we're arranging that you're going to be getting married so that when you're older. So this way it's not actually happening, which is a katana. It says Rashi, of a kedushin mekatanas lo ad shetigdo v'taymer b'ploni ani roitza. So that's something which perhaps we're allowed to do. That we're allowed to make stipulations and declarations now so that when she gets older, then she'll get married. So Pshita, why wouldn't you be able to do that? Maybe she has this fear. She's going to feel bad, not speak up, and Kamash Malan. So again, the problem is that maybe she really doesn't want this marriage, but because it was prearranged as a katana, so she's going to go with it, but she'll end up not wanting it afterwards, and therefore maybe she shouldn't do it at all while she's a katana. We're not concerned with that. Rav Huna Bagra Yom Echad, let's say she was a Bulgaris just for one day, so she became 12 and a half years old, and Iskadsha, then afterwards, when she's reached that age, she gets engaged, in that situation, the din is, even just one day after she's 12 and a half, we consider her to be a like an almana, and that her time that she's given is 30 days. Meisvei Bagra Harihi Ketuvot. So my love, Ketubot of the Basula. So when we're saying a Bulgaris is like someone who makes this claim, says Rashi, Ki'ilu Tavel Hachin Atzmo and Asuan, like this person who's coming to prepare themselves for a wedding. So it's referring to a Basula. That's what it must be talking about, and a Basula get 12 months. Lo. Ketuvah de Almana. It means the preparations of an Almana, which is 30 days. Tashma. Bulgaris Shashasa Shtei Masar Chayidish. If you have Bulgaris that waited, says Rashi, V'hacha Karma Bulgaris L'Sayv Shleishim. She became a Bulgaris after 30. V'Nara Shasa Shtei Masar Chayidish. Rebbe Lezer Omer Hoyel V'Chayiv Balam Mizona Seha Yafer. Since the husband is obligated to provide for him her mizonos, so therefore he has the right to be made for her nedarim. So what do we see? That when it comes to a Bulgaris, it says sheshasa shnei masar chodesh. Once 12 months go by, so that is what the din is. So Rashi v'hachi kaimer. Okay, so the answer is ema Bulgaris visha hahasa shnei masar chodesh. It's actually talking about the same thing. We're talking about a Bulgaris, and she delayed for 12 months. At that point, once the husband is able to, is obligated to mizonos, so therefore he has the right to be made for her nedarim. Tashma Hama'aris says a basula, a person who is engaged to a basula, bein shetava habal v'hima keves, bein shetava hiu ubal ma'akev. If either one of them refuses or wishes to push off the wedding, so they're given 12 months from that time of a lo mishas erison. It's not from the time of the engagement. Ubagra harihi kitvua. So ketzad, and this is the maskana. Bagra yom echad. Let's say she was Bulgarish just one day. Miskadsha. We're still going to give her 12 months because she only was Bulgarish for a short amount of time, and therefore she has the din of a basula. La rusa shloshim yoyim. So Tiyufta Rav Huna, Tiyufta. In fact, this is a Tiyufta Rav Huna who says that if she's a Bulgaris only for one day, that the din is that she's only given 30 days. So this is clearly not the case. We see Beferish that a Bulgaris for one day, she is given that of a Basula of 12 months. So my Lua Rusa Shoshim Yom, so Papa Hakagam, Bulgaris, She'avru Shnei Masar Chodesh. But Bagris, she's not 12 and a half, she's a year later, she's 13 and a half already. In this Kadja, then she gets engaged, nice look, Shalishim Yoim, Kalmana. That's when the din is that a girl, a Bulgaris will only get 30 days. And it's because she's already older. Again, once she's already older, maybe again, she's older, she's more mature, her clothes now fit a certain way, she's not growing anymore, let's say it that way. Which explains the second part of question 5. Va'im zman zeh mishas erison or mishatava habal. When do we say that there's 12 months? Is it mishas erison or from when the husband, or is it from shatava habal? So again, question 5, Bagra Rishasa Yud Beis Chaydish, Niskadsha Kol Kamazman Noisenlaw. So we say if she was a Boigeris and then 12 months go by, she's given 30 days, and it's Mishas Erison. That was question 5. Question 5. TA11 actually asked a little bit differently. Again, if she was a Bogeris and then afterwards 30 days later, a year later she gets engaged. TB12, which is basically the same thing. Kamazman Noisin Bogeris Maskana. So if she was a Bogeris just for one day, then we give her 12 months from the time of Erison. If she's Bagra and 12 months go by, then we give her only 30 days, and both times is B'shas Erison. Okay, let's continue with the next piece. So the Gemara then continues as follows. So again, that was the Tiyofta. So we see again that is the ruling is she's given 12 months, even if she becomes a Bogeris and gets engaged, let's say the next day, whatever. That then would be that she gets the whole year. Hagiyazman vo nisu. So our Mishnah said that if the year goes by and he doesn't marry her off, doesn't do chuppah, so all of a sudden he has to give her food. He also gives her truma. So Omalu Devar Torah. This is question 6. Manon the Arusa Bas Yisrael Oichel B'Truma Deraisa from this following Gemara. Devar Torah Arusa Bas Yisrael Oichel B'Truma. That a girl who's engaged, who's a Bas Yisrael, and she's marrying a Kohen, is allowed to eat truma. Technically, Shnemer B'Kohen Kiyik Nenevesh Kinyan Kaspai. Vaynamin Kinyan Kaspahu. The fact that he's giving her kesef, that's kedushin, so that's kinyan kaspai. So ma tam amar inu achelas. So why is she not allowed to eat the truma if technically she's allowed? So this is very familiar. We've had this numerous times. Shema yim, this is on kedushin as well. Shema yimzigu la kais bevesavia v'tishgal achal achal yisrael. So the problem is that she's still in her father's house, and since she's a kohen, she's a bas Yisrael, so all of her brothers and sisters are also Yisrael. And if she's starting to bring truma, even though she rightfully is allowed to eat it, but her brother and sister is going to want to eat some of this food also, and that's going to be problematic. There's no right for them to do that. What's the difference if it's been a year or not? You shouldn't be able to get it even after the year. Over there, they set aside a house for her. And therefore, since it was set aside, so therefore now she's not around her brothers. El miata, look at kohen l'Yisrael, v'leichel b'truma, dilma osel meichel b'hadei. If let's say you have a butler, a kohen butler to a Yisrael, he should also not be able to eat truma because maybe a Yisrael is going to eat it. So maybe we always have to be concerned if a kohen is ever in the vicinity of a non-kohen, that the non-kohen is going to eat the truma. No hashda mididhu safule, mididei achli. Over there, when we're talking about this butler, the boss is one who provides food. So you think now the boss is going to eat his food? No, the boss is the one that's giving him the food, not that the worker is giving the boss food. So you don't have to be concerned in that situation. Why does it mention the other way around? It's a good question. Look, Taisa says, "Mi asher loy parach do shchiach she'eichel beveis Yisrael." It's not shchiach that a kohen would just stam eat in the house of Yisrael. The gam in regilun lohilich truma imahem. He's not going to be bringing truma with them. Avlokuta is regilun listaker im Yisrael. Okay, so the practical situation is an employee. However, just stam bringing food into a non-kohen's house, you typically wouldn't do. Okay, Rav Shmuel but Rav Yehuda Imer Mishum Simpoin. Really, the reason why she cannot eat truma, even though midoraisa she's allowed, is because of Simpoin, because of the potential that she has some type of blemish on her body, and therefore, because of that, he will feel there was a mekachtos, that he didn't want to have married such a woman, and therefore, because of that, she had eaten truma mafreya. So you should have the same concern if there was no bia, so he hasn't seen her, if all chuppah happened was chuppah. But we know that once she's entered chuppah onto truma, we're not chayish of simpun. The hasam mivdak bodiklo v'hader mile. He's not going to do chuppah unless he's 100% certain. He may have done kedushin. However, he's going to have somehow investigated that she is okay, and Rashi says biyad kurabaysav, in the hands of the relatives. Obviously, he's not going to be examining her. That's obviously not appropriate. They're not married. So therefore, once chuppah takes place, you would assume he had done that already. El miata eved kayin shalachim Yisrael ulecha b'truma mishum simpoin. How about if you have a eved kohen that shalachu who's purchased from Yisrael? We should also be concerned of simpon. So Gemara says, what do you mean? Simpon ba'avadim leika. Why do we really care? So Rashi says, ein mumin mavatal mekach. If you purchase an eved and there's some blemish on their back that you didn't see, who cares? As long as they're able-bodied. De'i da'avroi, if it's outward, so hakachazile, you were able to see it before you bought them anyway. The gavoi l'malchakaboy. So you're hiring him for work. You don't care what he physically looks like. You don't care what is hidden. So the Gemara says what? Nimsa ganev. Let's say, what is the mum? Not a physical mum, but there's something else wrong. He's a thief, or as we continue to Nun Chesed Aleph, kuv justus. He's a kidnapper, so he giyoi. Rashi says, this is like, should be pretty known. And therefore you should have done the research before, and therefore you can't say it's a mechatos. You probably were makabel this person regardless of his flaws. So ma'ika list the mezuyin. What if, let's say, he's an armed bandit? O muktavo malchus. Then again, he's written over to malchus. Hanu kal islahu. There again, this is something in which there's a koll, and as Rashi says, v'savar v'kibel. You obviously recognized, understood this, and you didn't care, you accepted it. So michti. Ben lomar lo achol. My benayu. What's the real nafgamina? Whether you hold is because of the issue of simplon, there's a mum, or there's an issue of we don't want her to give the truma to her brothers and sisters. Either way, the din is that she's not allowed to eat truma. So why does it matter? So So what does that mean? So Rashi says as follows. This is where we're going to stop. Kibol of Baal es hamumin was simpun. The man says, I don't care if she has a mum. I didn't check. I don't care. Even if she does, I still want to marry her. So lekel mechosh l'shema tashkil yachil chaysa ikol mechosh. So when it comes to mum, if you're makabel the mumim, so then there's no issue of simpun. But there's still a problem. She may give her the truma to the brothers. On the other way, Masar Ha'av, says Rashi, l'shluch habal. Let's say the father already gave her over to the shluchim of the husband, so she's not in the jurisdiction in the house there anymore. Oh, shaholchu shluchei ha'avim shluchei habal, or the shluchei ha'av are traveling with the shluchei habal. She's not with her brothers and sisters anymore. Lekel mecha shema tashke le'achle'achasos. The halesnu gabo. They're not with her anymore, so there's no reason to be concerned. However, there's still an issue of simpun, and therefore for that reason you would not be able to eat truma, even though she is along the way. So no brothers and sisters are going to eat it, but the problem again is if you're concerned of the potential issue of simpun, so therefore in that case you would still not be able to eat truma. Adkan.